It is an extremely unfortunate situation, I think, for everybody involved, for the young man who passed away's family, for the man who wound up using his firearm. And there are a lot of lessons, a lot of takeaways from a situation like that. It's one thing to take a firearm for self-defense, and it's another one to use it in that kind of scenario. My biggest issue with constitutional carry is that people are no longer taking training because of it. If you do plan on carrying a firearm, I strongly recommend at least coming and taking the license to carry class. Even if you don't decide to get a license, the class goes over all the things you need to know. We go over really in depth the use of force laws, the difference between force and deadly force, and probably most importantly, when the law says you're justified in using either or to protect yourself, others, or property. And we go really heavy into that and really heavy into nonviolent dispute resolution, which honestly most of the time boils down to walking away from situations before they escalate. I ask my students in class, if we were standing on the precipice of a tank full of sharks and your phone fell in, would you jump in? And everybody kind of laughs and smiles, but nobody says yes. But when I ask, would you jump in if a child fell in? That generally gets more of an affirmative response. So if it's not worth you potentially dying over, if it's not worth you being put in danger, it's probably not worth taking another person's life over. There are very few situations where I'm willing to use my firearm, and most of them do not involve property. One of the best things that you can do is stay put or go somewhere safe and call 911. Remember, police officers are literally paid to handle these situations. So if something happens and you're not in immediate danger, if you are not for sure that you're in immediate danger, pick up the phone and call 911. If somebody robs you and runs off with your purse, don't chase after them, don't shoot after them, call 911 and let them come deal with that situation. It's hard for me to say whether another person should or should not carry a firearm, but you need to look into yourself and decide, do you have the mental and emotional intelligence to step away from a situation, to recognize that this truly is not worth it. We've had people come in and say that they need a gun to defend themselves, and the way they say it sometimes is a little bit concerning, and we actually have on very few occasions turned down customers because they're using bizarrely aggressive language. It's hard to describe if you've never been in that situation. They just give you the sense that they're looking for an excuse to use the firearm. My neighborhood Facebook page, we had some people go around breaking into cars in the middle of the night one night, and of course some people had cameras on their home and caught footage and shared it on our social media page for my neighborhood, and every other person was like, just let them come into my house and I'll meet them at the door with my gun, or you know, my 9mm, they're not going to outrun my 9mm, making really bizarre statements, especially on social media. It's interesting that you do that because you cannot delete anything truly from the internet. And if you think that a prosecutor won't dig into your social media posts and won't find that information and potentially use it against you, you're kind of out of your mind there. Because remember, going through this can cost you. What a lot of people don't think about is when you go through this situation, there's a very real chance that you'll be arrested, be detained, you could go to jail. During this whole proceedings, you could be in jail, and that's time that you're not working. That's money out of your pocket on top of your outbound expenses for attorney's fees and court costs and all of this. And it can take years to get through the legal system. They can potentially be convicted of that crime, then have the punishment phase. That's a whole separate hearing, separate situation. And then even after all of that, there's still potential for civil lawsuits. If you carry a firearm, that increases the likelihood that at some point you are going to wind up using a firearm. If you point your gun at somebody, that increases the likelihood that you're going to fire it. And if you fire a firearm at a person, very good chance that that person could die. And taking another person's life is not something that should be entered into lightly. For the average, what I'm going to call civilian, for lack of a better word, people who are not law enforcement or military, they are not psychologically prepared in most instances to deal with the emotional and psychological aftermath.
Yeah.